I will tell you an incident that happened to me and my mother-in-law on New Year's Eve. My girlfriend and I dated for 4 years and got married a year ago. We have been living together for 6 months now. I got to know her and her mom and realized I loved them both. My mother-in-law's name is Linda. She is 50 years old and divorced her husband 10 years ago. She is short in stature, with red, short-cropped hair and charming eyes. I paid particular attention to her charisma, despite my wife's presence. Linda's charisma was captivating. When my wife and I visited her home, I noticed her sometimes walking in front of me in her robe, almost dancing. At these moments she was always smiling, and I didn't know what to do or where to look. One day it started by chance, in the passage between the kitchen and the room. We met in the hallway, but we didn't move aside in time, and ended up squeezing past each other. It was very awkward. One day Linda asked me to come over and help her hang the curtains. My wife stayed home to take care of business and I went to Linda's house. I got a stepladder and set it up in front of the window. She climbed up on it and began buttoning the buttonholes on the curtains. I confidently held the stepladder, keeping an eye on her to make sure she didn't fall. As Linda was hanging the curtains, she lost her balance and the stepladder swayed. She cried out and I quickly picked her up with my strong arms to keep her from falling. Linda finished hanging the curtains and thanked me for my help and for saving her. There were many similar moments after that, but none of them were followed up on. After that day, I started thinking about Linda more often. There was something about her energy that drew me in, something magnetic. Every time we went to see her, I could feel the tension between us, which seemed to grow stronger each time. It wasn't just the way she smiled or the way her eyes seemed drawn to mine. It was the small, seemingly insignificant touches, the way her hand would linger on my arm for a moment, or the way she would laugh at my jokes, and her laughter would resound in my ears long after the moment had passed. On New Year's Eve, we decided to celebrate at our house, the three of us, my wife, Linda, and me. I prepared in advance, stocked up on all sorts of alcohol. On December 31st, my wife was busy preparing treats for the table when Linda arrived. She had taken off her sheepskin coat and looked beautiful. She was wearing a dark blue dress that fit her figure and her hair was perfectly styled. I decided it was time to sit down at the table. We got everything ready and finally sat down at the table. My wife and Linda started drinking martinis and I started drinking cognac. By midnight they had finished 2 bottles and were a little tipsy. As the chimes struck, they each had a glass of champagne, and we continued to watch TV, eat, drink, and talk. The conversation flowed easily and Linda seemed to become more and more relaxed and her laughter louder and more carefree. By 1 a.m. the martini bottle was empty and my wife fell asleep at the table. I carried her into the bedroom and put her to bed. Linda and I, being the stronger of the two, continued our little celebration. Perhaps we both just wanted to be alone. After a while, Linda got even more drunk, and I decided it was time for her to go to bed too. I took her to another bedroom where everything was prepared for her. When we reached the bedroom, Linda stumbled out and hugged me tightly. She said, "Son-in-law, I'm not letting you go now," and smiled at me. Her eyes were clouded with alcohol, but there was something else in them too, a spark of mischief, a hint of desire. I realized what she meant and smiled back. I thought, this is what New Year's Eve is all about. That New Year's Eve night was heady. The tension between us was at its peak at that moment, and for a second I thought time had stopped. I could feel her warmth as she hugged me tightly, her breath on my neck. It was exciting and scary at the same time. I knew what she wanted, and in that moment I realized I wanted it too. But the rational part of me took over, and I slowly loosened her grip, carefully guiding her toward the bed. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of longing and gratitude. I tucked her in, and after saying goodnight, I left the room, my heart pounding in my chest. I walked back to my bedroom, my mind reeling from what had just happened. I dreaded waking up first thing in the morning. My wife got up, went to wash her face and make coffee. Linda got up next, and then I joined them in the kitchen. They were sitting and talking about something. I wished them a good morning, acting as if nothing had happened, and Linda agreed, saying, "This morning is the most wonderful morning I've had in a long time." She cast a brief glance at me, unspoken words flickering in her eyes. My wife, oblivious to what was happening, smiled and asked if I wanted coffee. As we sat there sipping our coffee, I felt a strange mixture of emotions, guilt, excitement, fear, and something else I couldn't put into words. I knew that what had happened last night had changed something in my and Linda's relationship. There was an unspoken understanding between us, a shared secret that hung in the air. It was both exciting and frightening, and I had no idea what the future held for us. But that morning as we sat here together, Everything seemed perfect, like we were exactly where we were supposed to be. The warmth of the coffee, the laughter of my wife and Linda, the sunlight pouring through the window, it all seemed surreal, as if frozen in time. Later that day, Linda left and my wife and I spent the rest of the day relaxing at home. But I couldn't stop thinking about Linda, the way she hugged me, the way she looked at me. I knew I was treading on dangerous ground, but some part of me couldn't help but wonder what might happen next, what the future held for Linda and me. It was a thought that both excited and frightened me at the same time, and it wouldn't leave my mind.